every time.
And the interesting part was also that if you consider how especially Reset, how well he did with Chromie, how fast he completed that quest, you would have had expected this to have a bit more of an impact, but it actually didn't. It was nearly useless. He completed the quest between the 10th and the 11th minute, which is insane, but it just didn't matter in the grand scheme of things.
The Junkrat ban, I think, was key to a lot of that during the second ban phase, taking away a lot of what KSV likes to do, taking away a strong hero that could play into that multiple ways. So I think draft-wise, Ballistix turning the tables, and the play from SC today has picked up on the second part of the day. And again, the Rich plays in particular, I think it's hard to say this because if you go back all the way to BlizzCon 2016 and Rich playing different roles, he was more on the melee. This was before he retired. There was a lot of pressure on him to make plays in certain roles. Now we've got the role swap to him back on more of a ranged carry style role. And he definitely likes to make plays. And when he makes them, they look good. But when they backfire, it seems to have a major impact on the rest of the team.
Yeah, and I feel like that's not, you know, again, because you said the role swapping and some of the differences, and I mean, I feel like Rich has gotten a very, you know, diverse history when you look at his play, but there always has been that, especially at the lowest of lows, I feel like for KSV is when you feel like he's on those kind of heroes where he's like, okay, I got to go in, I got to try and make this play, and then he ends up dying. Again, we kind of always talk about that old school, like, Chen era, right, when that was happening, and they were able to get that pick. I didn't think this would be the moment that we would see that, and that being said, it's only one game, right? But without a doubt, after seeing that performance, it is something I got to be keeping my eye on, and everybody, and definitely Ballistix will be keeping their eye on, because it led to a lot of that lead.
I feel another problem that we are currently seeing in a lot of the games recently is that Malthael just doesn't have the impact that a lot of teams are hoping for. Paired with Uther, you still have that element of a Tormented Souls with Divine Shield, but a lot of the Malthael plays so far is they are jumping in and they are immediately focused and they die before they can have any impact on the fight itself.
Well, Sky Temple is the battleground we'll go to, and this is very reminiscent of the series earlier. It was actually game one of their series earlier, and KSV came out swinging in that game. They'll have a chance here as KSV has opted to take first pick and given that map pick over to Ballistix. So if KSV is going to just kind of swing the momentum a little bit back in their favor, I think this is definitely a battleground they can do it on.
It also has got to be very comfortable for Ballistix in the fact that, you know, they were able to play Tempest on both of these maps, and this was, you know, the 2 of the 3 wins they were able to get was on Infernal Shrines and Sky Temple, so they've got to be feeling good. The Sky Temple has been such a go-to, and with the momentum behind them, I'm suddenly going, you know, because I do feel like this is still more of a Ballistix map than it is a KSV. We saw in the last game how concerted we can see Ballistix be with camps, and I expect them, last time they struggled with that versus KSV. Somehow I feel like this is the moment where they're going to kind of overcome that and really open it up over that first temple.
Yeah, to be fair, this is also the map that KSV Black played the most at the tournament, and so far they're still undefeated here. But before the series started, they only dropped one single map, and that already has changed pretty quickly with the first one we played here. So Ballistix must feel really good coming off that victory, first of all against Tempest, and now immediately equalizing the score with the lead that KSV Black got through the winner bracket. So momentum is on their side, and things are looking good.
I feel like after that last game, too, another hero that we might see fluctuate in priority for KSV has got to be the Hanzo. There was a lot of good play there from SC. We've talked about maybe some of the hero pool pressure that, you know, KSV might need to put on them, and it felt like they did put on them in the draft in the first time that these two played today, but it wasn't the case, at least they're in the last draft. We'll see if it's going to change here on Sky. Uther, Maev, Malfurion still going to stick to what we saw out of the 1, 2, and 3 of the last draft.
The Malfurion, I think, is going to be a pretty high priority if KSV continues this Uther banning as they did earlier in their day. They're continuing to do it now. The Genji, however, Dreadnought, for me, was kind of that thing. Ballistix kept diving down the Genji rabbit hole and kept coming up empty. And I think if they're going to do it, it's normally better in the second pick as opposed to the first pick where we've seen them do it quite a bit. But with no Uther, is it really going to be that valuable?
I feel like I don't want to completely doubt it, not only because we've seen more teams be willing to adjust and transition into the Rhaegar if they feel like it's necessary, but also the teams have, it seems like, have been more comfortable with that X-Strike play. Granted, I'm looking at the last game, again, we talked about it, it didn't seem like it had that much value. It's definitely a concern, the fact that it, you know, we're taking this much time for Ballistix after a very generic opening into the draft.
I feel like if you don't go Genji here, you open up the door for Tracer a little bit wider because Genji does well against Tracer just because of the deflect against Pulse Bombs. And so I think it kind of dissuades the Tracer pick a little bit.
We got Hanzo back in business, and also Garrosh here now for the second time for KSV Black. But just before we're going ahead into the next part of the draft, there's still one question, Dred, in particular I would like to hear your thoughts on. Because that trend for Ballistix to ban Maiev no matter if you're first pick or second pick is just continuing right now. And is that something that concerns you in any way for them not trying to get her and always keep banning her out, not even leaving it up to the opponent to ban her out when they're first pick?
I feel like the only time that you can really argue that that is a advantageous decision is if you are so confident in your team, it's kind of more of a bamboozle, and then you get to the later part of this series, and then you just go, they're never going to expect this, right? And I'm just saying, to have that confidence level, I'm going to say that's very unlikely, and because of that, yes, it does raise quite a bit of concerns. Anytime you see a team feel like they inevitably have to ban something, especially of the objective strength that Maiev produces, without a doubt, you should consider yourself, I mean, mild setback in almost every draft you enter.
I mean, so far they've been able to make it work, but I'm really a bit afraid that in the later stages, KSV Black could try and exploit that. We've seen already attempts of Tempest in the earlier series to do it, and they got away with a victory on Dragonshire thanks to that. But for now, we have again a ban on Zeratul and Junkrat. Ballistix, of course, trying to get rid of Junkrat since it's such an insane hero for KSV Black. They're sitting at a 6-0 with him. I haven't lost a single game there, and Junkrat in general having such a huge impact on the Eastern Clash. At the Western Clash, it basically jumped up with, especially Snitch, of course, playing the hero quite a bit, but that trend has just continued as we headed into this tournament here in Taiwan.
Both of these teams, when they played on Sky Temple earlier, KSV ended with the Junkrat, and Ballistix ended with a Zeratul. So I'd say that memory, that short-term memory, is definitely there, opting to want to take away some of those strong picks that both teams know that they like. We've got Genji and Rhaegar locked in. With the Garrosh already being taken, we've seen, you know, the rise of ETC, but I'm not sure if this is going to be the composition or the team into it.
I wouldn't mind if we saw that, just because, again, talking about the trade-off of the Tyrael and the risk that that provides. We still see the Tychus coming out here for Ballistix, and then the Malthael of, I mean, I don't want to say high value, obviously, sitting that low into the draft, but it does feel, you know, moving into this triple DPS, and we talked about some of the concerns in the Malthael Vel, and I'm wondering, you know, is this the place? The fact that they are flexing their warrior for the very last pick, that's not a common strategy.
I have to say that I like Malthael in this situation a bit better, just simply because we have Rhaegar. We talked about how well he can do with the Divine Shield available. With Rhaegar, at least you have that additional tool through an Ancestral that can keep him alive when he is in that fight. And it's also, of course, the direct pressure against Garrosh. So it's a bit of a different setup in which he's played here compared to what we've seen on Infernal Shrines when Black drafted it together with Garrosh.
I agree with you definitely when looking at the Garrosh, you know, trade-off and seeing the higher spike in priority, but when it comes to the survivability of the Malthael, I do have concerns that we normally see when we see that double, you know, needing your support's Ancestral Healing or that hyper carry to sustain them. It's just one of those things where it's like, if Malthael's receiving my Ancestral Healing, this is the Genji high priority with the Rhaegar that is responsive due to the support choke at the top half of the draft, is that worth the trade? And normally the answer to that question is very much not. So much so that I would normally go, this is where you see the Tyrael to try and make up for that lack of, you know, sustain. You might not be able to help the Genji, but you can help make sure the Malthael does gain that value. But again, it's a bit of a deterrent in towards some of the picks we see here for KSV. The last pick onto the Falstad as well provides a bit of macro control and is advantageous into the Malthael side lane.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the assessment. I just feel that Malthael is a bit better here than it was the last one, but you're absolutely right. With Rhaegar is forced to keep Malthael alive throughout these fights, and of course there's very little he can do about the rest of the setup. Ballistix still needing their tank though, and we have seen a huge amount of ETC play from them, but in this setup it's going to be very rough for them no matter what. You go up against Blaze, you go up against Garrosh. That's a really tanky front line that we have for KSV Black. And ETC, they go for it again. They put their trust into Hooligan.
The ETC pick, I think it's just, what are your options at this point? It's Murd and ETC. Anub'arak doesn't really fit this composition.
I feel like you have to pick a warrior that can survive with the Garrosh. Like, you have 100%. To somebody who can pose the front line, and it's not like Johanna's going to accent that composition that much. Murden feels a bit dated, and Anub'arak I would put in the same caliber of tier, but it just comes down to whether or not it's survivable, and you get the value out of it. I actually, after the performance we did see from Hooligan, I like that we're willing to see them commit to that here.
I think it also helps because I don't see this being a mosh pit game. Just seen what's on the other side. Mosh Pit seems a little bit too difficult to pull off. We do have the false set on the other side, so that global is there. So post 10, yes, you'll have the Malthael probably on a Pale Horse for those quick rotations, but if you're trying to match the global as well as just establish a strong front line, I think ETC kind of hits that mark, especially given that it's Sky Temple.
Oh, I agree, especially with the Malthael trade-off with the side lane. It makes up for that kind of difficult question, but it also removes the massive playmaking capabilities, which might be necessary here for Ballistix, especially after some of the mosh pits we saw from Hooligan on the last series here. Reset, there's a reason that's one of the most played skins.
Just a good old taunt. That's what I use it for.
I mean, that's the only reason really to play, and you can be a cool parrot, like a little, the rainbow tint of it. Vision control here already for KSV with the flight used, but that's really not going to be too detrimental as you see the transition for Ballistix kind of feigning around this, cutting off this transition. Tis going to scout that out with a nice groundbreaker.
Dread, looking at this and what we saw from a previous series with Ballistix, they always have a very good early game strategy on Sky Temple. It's something that they've had for a very long time. You mentioned the camp part being a very prominent thing in their arsenal in terms of prioritizing the camps, knowing what to do with them. And I feel that given how the first temple phase plays out, if Ballistix gets a little bit of a lead with one of the early camps and then gets an early pick like they did in a team fight on Infernal Shrines, I feel that could snowball in the same manner that we had in game 1.
Completely agree with you, but I do want to raise that there are some differences that exist between that last game and some of the way that played out into this one, and mainly it's just the advantage of getting the protection around those camps. Malfuri and Hanzo are some of the best at defending those bottom giants and cycling that pressure there, which generally leads to an advantageous transition towards the Knights, and as you see them starting them off right here, that is not the case. The defensive siege is near non-existent for Ballistix, so what I'm trying to say here is that no matter how well they do it, as long as KSV doesn't totally kind of done goof at a specific moment, compositionally they have an advantage with these rotations. So I would say it's more of an outplay if Ballistix somehow makes themselves get an advantage through these transitions, through these rotations. And I like this. Look, this is already an adjustment. They send the ETC and Tychus to make the response down below rather than leaving it as just a one-man defense for a long period of time. Oftentimes, teams into KSV have done that as the proper response. But look at this invade actually on the Genji. This is some next level trying to compensate for the, again, compositional disadvantage that they have.
We can see that on the mini-map. He's gonna be met with a Blaze and a False Stat. So it's not like he can do a ton there. SC getting the deflect in just in time as that Fort trying to get a little bit of damage in, but it does get the Night Camp picked up there for KSV. Now, how much they can get out of this is going to be the next question. They have the False Stat, they have the Blaze. We saw that strong push in the bottom lane right before that. I think that was definitely an advantage that KSV managed to pull off, and they're going to push in here to the top lane really quickly.
Yeah, and this is going to still be great for KSV, but by that invade on the Genji, it forced the cap on the side of KSV maybe a bit earlier than you would normally expect. And typically, KSV is the one stacking their Night Camp to meet at their front wall. So this is great for Ballistix. And again, that was an adjustment through the decision-making based on the comp. Very well done. But not having the full 3-man to 3-man response on the top half of the map is still going to be slightly detrimental and should lead to a pretty easy clear. So KSV slightly pulling ahead, but I still have a huge appreciation for what Ballistix is doing here on Sky.
See how this plays out as the temples are now active, and when you can get a little bit of that damage into the top lane, it's normally a little bit better to get that top temple, try and get that early fort, and get a little bit of the advantage structure-wise and in the experience department. That's exactly what they're doing. You can see Ballistix backing off of this middle one as KSV showed quite a few members here on this middle temple.
Rhaegar ended up making the transition towards top. One of the better supports to get that solo clear. It's not going to have any pressure for the long while. And for the most part, this first temple phase looks like both teams are comfortable with kind of the stalemate that they have. Hold on, spoke too soon here. Jungha looking for the collapse. Not going to get the reveal yet. And oh, excuse me, not Jungha looking for the collapse. That's the wrong shrine there. Silly Dread. Never mind. So then never mind. It's just going to be the stalemate. Both teams just kind of let it go. Look for the, the even trade, and now it's kind of interesting because typically what we see is that pressure towards at least trying to get an advantage on the skirmish over one of those two shrines. And I want to know what is the thought process, at least on Ballistix or KSV side, because normally you would expect them to be a bit more aggressive in that situation when they got the advantage to the camps, and it just is a bit slower tone and pacing for them from what we normally see on Sky.
I think that basically says it in the experience and the lack of team fighting that we've seen. I think that was a very fast-paced game, number one, and there was a lot of skirmishing early and a lot of team fights throughout. We even saw the early camp invades from Ballistix. Seems like Sky Temple bringing a little bit of a different tone to the game here, but KSV slight advantage in terms of experience, but it's marginal and it's pretty even at best, and we're going to see if these teams, if they both pick up their Siege Giants, see who's going to be the most aggressive. SDE
gonna get flipped over. Just caught. Nice body block there after the root, and that is going to be the first kill for KSV. Definitely, no, SDE and friends did not expect to see Tist right there waiting at the side for the groundbreaker and the flip. It's one of those moments where you just go, oh, now that I see them, guys, I'm in a bad spot. He went for the right direction to try and get the juke, but just too little too late.
But the pathing there, it's a little bit questionable. It's like, is there a reason you need to go that way? And I think now what is a minor mistake turns into a much bigger mistake because the Experience League now starting to move heavily in front of KSV, opening up this bottom lane, taking away that well, which is normally an advantage that you can have against the next Temple phase, which will be here at the bottom. So KSV now also approaching 10 tread.
Yeah, actually, you highlighted it great, and it was even worsened by the fact that when you look at the defense over that giant camp and some of the problems there, we were talking about KSV already has a compositional advantage at the siege kind of anti-siege trade-off, and Tychus is your best tool to be able to stop that. And so the fact that you not only lost a hero at debatably one of the worst timings around, you know, who can get the upper hand on Sky, but then it's also which hero they ended up losing. So great pick there for KSV. And again, you know, kind of the pathing decision-making from SDE. Boss is going to be started before their heroics are here for Ballistix. Gus is here, and just in case somehow we see Ballistix get their heroics, but it doesn't look like that's the case. Here's a boss and a lot of shots down below on that temple.
A lot of shots indeed, because Hanzo there clearing that boss out quickly allowed for KSV to grab that. You can see baiting out the boss stun, but now with 10 picked up, the boss, it's an early boss, Dread, so it's not going to do a ton of damage. It warrants a little bit of a response, but as long as this fort still stands long enough while it's also enduring the temple shots that could have been had KSV moved down, that allows Ballistix to rotate down and look for this fight.
Falstad has actually shown himself on mid as well. So this is information that Ballistix should be possibly looking to capitalize on, but they're not going to execute yet. Now making the transition down. This is going to be a huge Gus flank that nobody on the side of Ballistix knows quite yet. SDE. Oh, tread lightly here. Here we go. Reset's going to show up. Get a little damage. Nobody going to go in quite yet, but there's the jet propulsion. Mosh pit on the back line. Bunker's going to be used. Twilight Dream gets the interrupt there and the damage onto SDE, but the ancestral healing does end up landing. Hooligan's on the back line, but he is too low in HP. 2 men down. And KSV, what a brilliant initiation.
Great initiation there for KSV, as the Gust ended up being used as a safety net against that Genji, but it didn't matter as Hooligan went in to pull that trigger, but the bunker is a great place to hide during a dance party like that, and you could see that KSV making good use out of it. So between the boss, between the temple phase, we're now starting to see that lead stretch just a little bit, about a full level lead for KSV when you look at experience. But the bigger part is the mini-map when we see those structures. The fort down, the middle fort almost down. That's a major point here on Sky Temple.
That was the first time that it feels like we've seen Ballistic hesitate over some of the decision-making that they've had to make. And it wasn't necessarily the toughest of moments for them, especially looking at the last series. They were very good at dealing with extremely pressuring situations, but that one, you know, kind of a questionable moment where you see the Falstad information on mid, you don't look for the initiation, but you aren't clearing the boss either. Falstad made a free rotation and had the opportunity to sit still for, you know, 5, 6, 7s there. That is not, you know, what we look for, you know, when looking at, you know, the grand finals here, because there is so much pressure and so much speed with the rotations and the information available. KSV is not going to let you make that mistake multiple times, and that is why they've been able to pull ahead in this game.
They're going to pull ahead heavily here because 13 is just seconds away. They'll move forward onto this fort, use that talent to your advantage, use their strength. Falstad doing a good job. If you look on the minimap, he's actually hiding in that bush, not showing himself this go around, and so Ballistix has no idea where he's at. By hiding in that bush, not showing, it allowed for a very safe play. The Dragon Arrow with the initiation. Kyocha going in as well. You can see they are trying to fight back. The Twilight Dream is there, but they are too far back, Dread.
Yeah, and with that, what was the trade here? 3 heroics on the side of KSV just for the Tormented Souls. Flight from the Falstad. That was, you know, you talked about sitting in the shrub, and almost about 3 seconds later, he came out for the clear onto those Giants, got a little bit of damage. Ballistix did try and get that punishment, but the fact that they were able to trade just the Tormented for, again, so many heroics for KSV, this is a big advantage that they have. Bunker will be here, disengage from the Gust will be here as well. But if I'm Ballistix, this is the moment where I want to get that 13 and try and initiate before we see Malfurion and Hanzo get back and restored with heroics.
Right now, both temples active, mid and bot. If KSV opts to just trade, they definitely have it within them with this amount of a lead as the third fort has fallen on the side of Ballistix. 13 now here for Ballistix. We'll see if they want to try and pull the trigger on a team fight as they start to stand their ground here against KSV Black.
Power slide from Hooligan, knockback onto Kyocha. Not going to take too much damage. SC goes in, he quickly goes out. Jungha is going to go ahead and throw out his E there. Nice flip onto Hooligan. Not going to make anything happen yet. Bunkers dropped. Everybody comes in. Everybody goes out. Power slide in from Hooligan. Gust is going to deter him any farther, but he did not use the mosh pit, so that is not a soft reset here. Ballistix now getting a couple of shots on mid, but their health bars are very, very low. Rich looking hungry here with those scattering arrows. Not going to confirm anything yet.
I think Rich wants a little bit of payback for last game as he's aggressive there. Speaking of aggressive, Reset goes in. He gets a few auto attacks in, confirms the kill. Reset, however, has to be a little bit careful. He calls for reinforcements as Tiston team have come down, and they're looking for more.
And they're going to get the slow and the kill onto Hooligan. SDE gets flipped once again into all the members of KSV. 3 of them are now dead. A lot of shots still remain on bottom. Actually, the entire temple here for KSV to pick up, and the remainder of that on mid. Hyde getting a little ambitious for a moment, hoping he could steal the rest of those shots, but that's not going to be the case. Now we are looking at a huge structure disadvantage on the side of Ballistix, a huge experience advantage, and then worst of all, the 16 talent here.
And we've also got a boss that just spawned as we see Hanzo, who's able to rip through that. And with the death timers being so long at this point, Hanzo is basically, he needs just a few seconds at this point. He's going to melt the boss, and Dreadnought, the bottom temple, fires on that bottom lane. You'll have a boss push in as well. You also have some siege giants that are going to be available. This could be not only just a keep, maybe an outside of a victory push here if KSV wants to really be aggressive.
So we can see the decision making on what they intend depending on how many shots they consume. The optimal call, if you were not going to be going for, getting too much damage on the keep or even past that onto the core, you wouldn't consume all these shots at this point in time. You have the opportunity to stagger that, push with the boss, and then back out, get the rest of the shots that get the keep for free. Odin's used as a heavy defense here. Falstad's going to get the flight in. Giants are going to back it up. Double stacked here. Here's the keep. KSV is looking for the core. Jungha goes in, try to get the tormented. So Bunker is going to get there. Hooligan unable to move in for a mosh pit. He gets taunted, and there is going to be 2 people on Ballistic already falling. KSV is now looking to march towards the core. SC using the Dragon Blade, getting the deflect and the Ancestral Healing, but without a reset, he's not going to make it out. He goes in once more, but Rich is returning the favor of last game hits with the Scattering Arrow, and this is now going to be GG here for KSV.
KSV played this perfectly around their team fighting prowess as they finish this with 10 kills to 0 and just return the favor of dominance. This is the KSV that we saw earlier in the day and throughout the tournament thus far. They used every resource they had available to take these team fights, played a little bit of macro strategy as well that, kind of KSV hitting all the right checkbox on this one.
It's just really surprising to think that that game